Imagine for a moment that you are living in a prison. It is a comfortable prison, perhaps, with familiar walls and a predictable routine, but it is a prison nonetheless. You can see the world of freedom just outside the bars, a world of deep love, of fearless authenticity, of profound inner peace. You can see the woman you know you are meant to be living that life. You run towards her with all the energy in your soul, only to be yanked back, hard, by a chain you cannot see. You try again and again, you are pulled back, left with the chafing marks on your spirit and the heartbreaking question, what is this invisible force that is holding me back? That force has a name. These are the psychological chains. They are the invisible prisons we inhabit. They are the unconscious beliefs, the unhealed wounds, and the silent vows we made to ourselves as children in order to survive. They were forged in the fires of our past to protect us, to keep us safe, to help us belong. But the very chains that once protected the child are now imprisoning the woman. They are the source of your self-sabotage, the silent architects of your repeated patterns, the reason you feel so frustratingly stuck. You can feel their weight, even if you cannot name them. It is the chain that makes you say yes when you mean no. It is the chain that makes you believe that love must be earned through tireless performance. It is the chain that whispers that your power is dangerous, that your anger is unladylike, that your needs are a burden. But here is the most profound and liberating truth. These chains, which feel as solid as steel, are forged from nothing more than a thought, and a chain made of thought can be broken by a single silent shift in consciousness. This video is the key to that prison. We will not just name the 10 most common psychological chains that hold women back from their true sovereign power. We will show you how to find them within your own psyche, and we will teach you the art of how to silently break each one, not through a loud and violent rebellion, but through a quiet, courageous, and definitive return to yourself. This is not a lesson in how to live more comfortably in your prison. It is a guide to your own great escape. The first and perhaps most common chain is the one forged in the smithy of our earliest social conditioning. It is a vow taken so young that we do not even remember speaking it. It is the silent, sacred, and profoundly limiting vow of the good girl. The good girl is the part of us who learned a simple, powerful lesson. To be loved is to be agreeable. Her prime directive is to maintain social harmony at all costs. She is a master of anticipating the needs of others, a virtuoso of accommodation, a silent expert in the art of making herself small so that others may feel big. She believes, on a cellular level, that conflict is dangerous, that her needs are a burden, and that her primary value in the world lies in her ability to be pleasing, easy, and endlessly accommodating. She is a social chameleon, a beautiful and tragic master of camouflage. She can shift the colors of her personality to blend in seamlessly with any group, any partner, any expectation. The tragedy is that in becoming a master of blending in, she has forgotten her own true colors. She has become invisible even to herself. This vow, which may have once kept her safe as a child, has become a chain that now strangles her adult soul. She lives as a ghost in her own life, her days dictated not by her own desires, but by a desperate, constant effort to manage the perceptions of others. So how do you silently break a vow that you never consciously made? You do not break it with a loud declaration of war. You do not break it by suddenly becoming aggressive or confrontational. You break it with a quiet, internal, and revolutionary shift in your priorities. The silent way to break the vow of the good girl is to begin, in every small choice, to prioritize the feeling of self-respect over the feeling of being liked. Let us be clear. Being liked is a wonderful feeling. It is the sugary dessert of human connection, a quick and pleasant rush. Self-respect, however, is the solid food. It is the deep, nourishing sustenance that builds a strong and unshakable soul. The good girl has been living on a diet of sugar, and she is starving. The practice begins in the small moments. A friend asks for a favor that you do not have the energy to give. The good girl, addicted to the sugar of being seen as helpful, says yes, all while a quiet resentment begins to build in her stomach. The woman breaking this chain pauses, she takes a breath, and she asks herself one simple question. Which choice will allow me to respect myself in the morning? And she realizes that the solid, nourishing feeling of honoring her own truth is more valuable than the fleeting sweetness of her friend's approval. And so, with kindness but with firmness, she says, "I wish I could, but I can't do that right now." This is the silent snap of the chain. It is not a battle with her friend. It is a choice she makes inside her own being. She chooses the solid food of her own integrity over the sugar of being liked. Each time she makes this choice, the chain of the good girl grows weaker, and the sovereign woman within her grows stronger. The second chain is a direct consequence of the first. Once you have taken the vow of the good girl, you are automatically bound by her most sacred and most painful law. It is the deep, unconscious, and often unshakable belief that love must be earned. This is the central dogma of the unworthiness wound. It is a psychological chain forged in the moments when love was presented not as a free gift, but as a conditional reward. Perhaps it was the love of a parent that was only given after a good grade or a clean room. Perhaps it was the affection that was withdrawn as a form of punishment. We learned in our bones that our inherent being was not enough. To be loved, we had to do. We had to perform, to achieve, to please. Love became a wage to be earned, not a sun to be basked in. As an adult, this chain is a relentless and exhausting taskmaster. It turns relationships into a constant performance review. You are always secretly asking, "Am I doing enough? Am I good enough yet?" You become a master of the grand gesture, the over-the-top effort, believing that the sheer weight of your doing will finally convince a man of your worth. You are the one who plans all the dates, who initiates all the difficult conversations, who does all the emotional heavy lifting. You are, in essence, constantly trying to prove your value to a man, hoping that he will finally look at all your effort and declare you worthy of his love. But this is a tragic misunderstanding of the nature of true desire. A man is not attracted to the woman who works the hardest. He is attracted to the woman who has the deepest sense of her own inherent value. Your constant doing is a broadcast of a painful message. It silently tells him, "I do not believe I am worthy of your love just for being. I must prove my worth to you." And this, paradoxically, makes him question your value himself. So how do you break a chain that is tied to your deepest sense of worth? You do not break it by demanding that he see your value. You break it by becoming the source of your own. The silent way to break this chain is to begin the sacred practice of self-validation. It is to learn how to give yourself the applause you have been begging the world to give you. This is the practice we call the applause of one. It begins with a quiet, daily recognition. At the end of each day, instead of cataloging your failures or the ways you did not measure up, you must consciously and deliberately acknowledge one small act of your own integrity. It could be the moment you held a boundary, the moment you spoke a difficult truth, the moment you showed kindness when it was not required. You then place a hand on your heart, and you give to yourself the one thing you have been seeking from others. You silently say to your own soul, "I see you, I see your effort, I see your courage, and I am so proud of you." This is not an act of ego, it is an act of profound self-parenting. You are in that moment giving to your own inner child the unconditional approval she may have never received. With each repetition of this practice, you are not just thinking a new thought, you are forging a new neural pathway. You are building a new source of dopamine, a new reward system that is internal, stable, and completely under your control. The chain begins to rust. The desperate need for his applause fades, replaced by the quiet, steady, and deeply satisfying applause of your own soul. The third psychological chain is one of the most subtle and most insidious. It is a chain that is often disguised as humility, as modesty, as being a team player. It is the fear of your own power, a terror that most often manifests as the belief that you are too much. This is the chain that keeps you playing small. You have a brilliant idea in a meeting, but you stay silent, afraid of being seen as too ambitious. You achieve something wonderful, and when someone congratulates you, you immediately diminish your accomplishment, saying, "Oh, it was nothing, really." You meet a wonderful new partner, and just as the connection deepens, you find yourself unconsciously sabotaging it, picking a fight, pulling away, because the fear of having something so good feels more terrifying than the familiar pain of losing it. This is the voice of the chain. It whispers that your light is too bright, that your passion is too intense, that your ambition is too masculine, that your joy is too loud. It is the fear that if you were to truly, unapologetically, unleash the full force of your own magnificent being, you would be abandoned, that you would be seen as a threat, that you would be, in a word, too much for the world to handle. Think of your power, your life force, as a brilliant, blinding light. From a young age, many women are taught to take this light and to hide it under a bushel basket. We learn to dim our own shine, to let only a soft, gentle, acceptable glow escape, so as not to intimidate others, so as not to cast a shadow on those around us. We learn that our smallness is the price we must pay for connection and belonging. So how do you silently break a chain that is forged from the very fear of your own magnificence? You break it not with a grand declaration, but with a quiet, internal act of conscious expansion. It is the practice of giving yourself, moment by moment, permission to take up your own sacred space. The practice is this: the next time you accomplish something, no matter how small, you must resist the conditioned urge to immediately diminish it. Instead, you will pause. You will take one deep, sovereign breath, and for just 10 seconds, you will allow yourself to feel the full, unapologetic magnitude of your own achievement. Feel the pride. Feel the joy. Feel the power. In your mind's eye, see that bushel basket over your light, and with a quiet intention, lift it just an inch. When you are in a conversation and you have a powerful truth to speak, you will resist the urge to soften your words. You will speak your truth, calmly and clearly, and you will give yourself permission to own the full authority of your own voice. You will lift the basket another inch. This is the silent breaking of the chain. It is a rebellion against the myth that your power is a threat. With each small act of owning your own light, you are rewriting an ancient script. You are learning on a cellular level that your power is not a weapon that pushes others away, but a beacon that calls in those who are not afraid of your light, and gently and necessarily repels those who are still in love with the dark. The fourth chain is a ghost from the past that dictates the future. It is one of the most confusing and painful patterns a person can experience. It is the unconscious loyalty to an old trauma. This is the chain that makes you feel as if you are living the same painful relationship over and over again, just with different people. You end a relationship with an emotionally unavailable man, vowing to never make that mistake again, only to find yourself 6 months later inexplicably drawn to another man who is just as distant. You leave a friendship that was critical and draining, only to attract a new friend with the same exact patterns. It can feel like a curse, a cruel trick of fate. But it is not fate, it is psychology. And the reason for this pattern is a fundamental truth about our nervous system. It does not prioritize what is healthy, it prioritizes what is familiar. To your unconscious mind, the devil you know is always safer than the angel you don't. An old trauma, a past wound, like the pain of an emotionally distant parent, carves a deep, well-worn groove in your psyche, and your emotional vehicle, having traveled down this road thousands of times, will naturally and automatically fall into that same familiar groove, even if you consciously know that the road leads to a dead end. A healthy, available, and loving connection, in contrast, is a new, unpaved, and uncertain path. And to the primitive part of your brain, what is uncertain feels dangerous. So how do you silently break a chain that is forged from the very wiring of your own nervous system? You do not break it with willpower alone, for the pull of the familiar is stronger than any conscious intention. You break it with the gentle but persistent power of mindful awareness and conscious choice. The practice begins with pattern recognition. You must become a compassionate detective of your own life. Look at your past connections. Look beyond the different faces and the different stories and look for the familiar feeling. Do you see the pattern? Do you see how the feeling of having to earn love from your current partner is the same feeling you had with your father? Do you see how the feeling of being misunderstood by your friend is the same feeling you had as a child? The silent break happens in the moment of new attraction. You meet someone new. There is a spark. But then, you feel it. That familiar, magnetic, and often intense pull. It is the feeling of your wheels beginning to slide into the old familiar groove. In that moment, you must practice the sovereign pause. You do not need to run. You do not need to judge. You simply need to pause and to name what is happening. You say to yourself, there it is, this is the old road, this feeling is familiar. Just by naming it, you bring the unconscious pattern into the light of your conscious awareness. And in that light, for the first time, you have a real choice. You can see the groove, and you can, with a small, gentle, but deliberate act of will, steer the wheel just an inch to the side. You can choose the new path. This may mean choosing to go slower than you normally would. It may mean choosing the person who feels calm and boring over the one who creates a familiar storm of excitement. It is in these small, silent acts of choosing the unfamiliar that you finally break your loyalty to the trauma of the past and pledge your allegiance to the freedom of your future. The fifth chain is a noble and exhausting prison. It is a belief system that is often praised by our culture as a sign of a strong work ethic and a good character. It is the unconscious addiction to the struggle. This is the chain that whispers that anything that comes easily cannot be trusted. It is the deep-seated belief that your value is directly proportional to the difficulty of your life. You are the woman who feels more comfortable in chaos than in calm. You may even unconsciously create drama in your relationships or sabotage your own success. Because the feeling of peace and ease is so unfamiliar that it feels unsafe. This is the energy of the martyr, the part of us that believes that suffering is a holy act and that joy must be earned through a trial by fire. A woman bound by this chain is like a river that has been taught it must only flow uphill. She is in a constant, heroic, and utterly exhausting battle against the natural current of life. She sees her own exhaustion not as a signal to rest, but as a badge of honor, a testament to how hard she is trying. In her relationships, this manifests as a deep distrust of a connection that feels too easy. If she meets a kind, stable, and emotionally available man, her nervous system can go into a state of panic. It feels boring. It feels like a trap. She is more comfortable with the familiar, intense struggle of trying to win over a difficult or distant partner, because that struggle feels like love to her conditioned mind. So how do you silently break a chain that you have been taught to see as a virtue? You break it by learning the lost art of conscious receiving. It is the practice of retraining your nervous system to associate ease, joy, and pleasure not with danger or laziness, but with safety and worthiness. The practice is a series of small, silent rebellions against the struggle. It happens in the micro moments of your day. When a stranger offers you a genuine, warm smile, you will resist the urge to look away. You will meet their gaze, allow the warmth in, and receive it. When a project at work flows with an unexpected ease, you will resist the urge to be suspicious, to look for the hidden problem. You will pause, take a breath, and allow yourself to feel the simple pleasure of things working out. And most importantly, when you are with a man and the connection feels calm, safe, and easy, you will resist the urge to create a storm. You will consciously choose to see this peace not as a sign of boredom, but as the very prize you have been seeking. In these moments, you can practice a silent affirmation. Place a hand on your heart and whisper to your own soul, "It is safe to receive this. I am worthy of ease." Each time you consciously choose to receive a moment of ease, you are loosening the grip of the chain. You are teaching your body, on a cellular level, that life does not have to be a constant uphill battle. You are giving your soul permission to stop fighting the current, to turn around, and to finally joyfully flow with the river. The sixth psychological chain is one that is often disguised as intelligence, as passion, as having high standards. It is a chain that feeds the ego while starving the soul. It is the compulsive need to be right. This is the chain that turns a simple conversation into a debate and a disagreement into a battlefield. The woman bound by this chain is a brilliant lawyer for her own ego. In any discussion, her primary goal is not to connect, but to win the case. She listens not to understand, but to find the flaws in the other person's argument. She gathers her evidence, prepares her counterpoints, and seeks a final verdict from the judge of the conversation. You are right, and I am wrong. She may win many of these battles, She may prove her point with flawless logic. She may have the satisfaction of the last word. But with every small victory for her ego, her connection to others suffers a quiet death. A relationship is not a courtroom. Intimacy cannot flourish in a space of constant debate. The need to be right creates a dynamic where one person must always be wrong, where partnership is impossible because the only available roles are that of victor and vanquished. This pattern is often born from a deep-seated insecurity. The ego believes that if it is wrong, it is worthless. Its entire sense of self is built upon the fragile foundation of being correct, of being in control, of being the one who knows. The need to be right is not a sign of confidence, it is a sign of a profound terror of the alternative. So how do you silently break a chain that feels so integral to your own intelligence and identity? You break it by asking yourself one of the most powerful and liberating questions from Stoic philosophy. It is a question that, when asked honestly in a moment of conflict, can instantly shift your entire reality. The practice is to, in the heat of a disagreement, pause and silently ask your own soul, would I rather be right, or would I rather be at peace? This question is a sacred pattern interrupt. It pulls you out of the small, noisy courtroom of your ego and into the vast, quiet temple of your higher self. It reminds you that there is a prize far greater than the fleeting satisfaction of winning an argument. That prize is your own inner tranquility. The next time you are in a disagreement and you feel that familiar fiery urge to prove your point, to deliver the final crushing piece of evidence, you will pause, you will take a breath, and you will ask the question. And as you feel the truth of the answer, that you would in fact rather be at peace, you will consciously choose to lay down your weapons. This is the silent break. It is not about conceding that you are wrong. It is about deciding that the argument itself is no longer worth the cost to your own well-being. You can then choose a response that serves your peace. You might say, I can see we see this differently and that's okay. Or, you've given me something to think about. You are not surrendering. You are wisely and strategically retreating from a battle that has no real prize. With each repetition of this practice, you are teaching yourself that your worth is not in your rightness, but in your peace. And you are becoming a woman whose presence is a sanctuary, not a battlefield. The seventh psychological chain is a cage built specifically to contain the magnificent, untamed power of the feminine soul. It is a chain forged from a single whispered accusation that has silenced countless generations of women. It is the deep and pervasive fear of being too much. You are too loud, you are too emotional, you are too passionate, you are too ambitious, you are too intense, you are too smart, you are too sensitive. You are, in your very essence, too much to handle. This is the chain that represses the wild woman archetype. It is the belief that your authentic, full-spectrum, powerful self is overwhelming and unlovable, and that to be accepted, you must constantly edit, soften, and shrink yourself down to a more manageable size. A woman bound by this chain is like an eagle who has been taught to live like a sparrow. She has magnificent, powerful wings, a cry that could echo through the mountains, and a spirit that was born to soar in the vast open sky. But she keeps her wings tightly folded. She chirps softly. She tries to fit in on a small, crowded branch with the other birds, terrified that if she were to ever truly spread her wings and unleash her true cry, she would be seen as a monster, as a threat, and be cast out of the flock forever. This manifests in 1,000 small acts of self-censorship. You have a strong, passionate opinion, but you soften it with phrases like, "This might be a stupid idea, but..." You feel a great, full-throated laugh rising from your belly, but you stifle it, turning it into a polite, quiet giggle. You feel a wave of righteous anger or profound grief, and you immediately apologize for being too emotional. Every single one of these moments is an act of caging your own eagle. So how do you silently break a chain that is forged from the fear of your own magnitude? You break it with the practice of giving yourself permission. It is a series of small, courageous, and silent acts of expression. The goal is not to suddenly unleash the full force of your eagle in a way that feels terrifying. The goal is to simply begin to stretch your wings. The practice is this. The next time you are in a situation where you feel the impulse to shrink, to soften, to apologize for your own intensity, You will pause. You will take a single, conscious breath, and you will give yourself silent permission to be just 5% more. If you have an opinion, you will state it with 5% more clarity, without the apologetic preamble. If you feel a laugh rising, you will let 5% more of its authentic joy escape. If you feel a strong emotion, you will allow yourself to feel and express 5% more of its truth, without immediately judging it. This is the silent break. It is not about becoming a different person overnight. It is about the small, consistent, and radical act of reclaiming your own space, your own voice, your own light, 5% at a time. With each small act of authentic expression, you are teaching your nervous system a new truth, that it is safe to be you. It is safe to spread your wings, and you will discover that the people who are meant to be in your life are not the sparrows who are frightened by your flight, but the fellow eagles who are inspired to soar alongside you. The 8th psychological chain is the invisible warden that guards the prison of the good girl. It is the powerful, paralyzing emotion that stops so many women from claiming their own sovereignty. It is the heavy, suffocating guilt of saying no. A woman bound by this chain lives in a state of porous boundaries. She is a kingdom with no gates and no guards. Anyone is free to wander in, to take her resources, her time, her energy, her peace, and to leave their own emotional mud on her floors. She believes on a deep, conditioned level that saying no is a fundamentally selfish act. She has learned that her worth is tied to her utility to others, to her constant, open, and unconditional availability. For her, saying no does not feel like an act of self-preservation. It feels like an act of aggression, a betrayal of her role as a kind and loving woman. And so she says yes. She says yes when her body is screaming no. She says yes when she is already exhausted and depleted. She says yes out of obligation, out of fear, out of a desperate need to not disappoint anyone. And with every inauthentic yes, a small piece of her soul dies. The guilt of a potential no feels so terrifying that she chooses the slow, quiet poison of resentment instead. So how do you silently break a chain that is so deeply intertwined with your sense of goodness? You do not break it by becoming a harsh or uncaring person. You break it by radically reframing the very meaning of the word no. The silent break is the internal realization that a no to another person is often a profound yes to yourself. The practice is to, before you answer any request, perform a silent internal check-in. It is to pause, and instead of immediately calculating the other person's potential disappointment, you must turn your attention inward. You must ask your own soul a simple question. What is the truest and most loving choice for me in this moment? You learn to see that your energy is not an infinite resource to be given away to anyone who asks. It is the sacred, life-giving water in the well of your own being. And it is not only your right, but your responsibility to be a wise guardian of that well. The silent break is the internal affirmation that must precede the external boundary. It is the act of whispering to your own heart, my peace is a sacred treasure. My energy is a finite resource. It is not selfish to protect what is sacred. It is a holy duty. It is only from this place of profound self-devotion that you can deliver a clean, calm, and guilt-free no. This is the practice of our sovereign statement. Your no is not an apology. It is not a debate. It is a complete sentence. It is a quiet, powerful, and loving act of honoring the sacred ground of your own life. And you will discover that the right people will not be angered by your gates. They will respect the beautiful and well-tended kingdom that lies within them. The 8th psychological chain is the invisible warden that guards the prison of the good girl. It is the powerful, paralyzing emotion that stops so many women from claiming their own sovereignty. It is the heavy, suffocating guilt of saying no. A woman bound by this chain lives in a state of porous boundaries. She is a kingdom with no gates and no guards. Anyone is free to wander in, to take her resources, her time, her energy, her peace, and to leave their own emotional mud on her floors. She believes on a deep, conditioned level that saying no is a fundamentally selfish act. She has learned that her worth is tied to her utility to others, to her constant, open, and unconditional availability. For her, saying no does not feel like an act of self-preservation. It feels like an act of aggression, a betrayal of her role as a kind and loving woman. And so she says yes. She says yes when her body is screaming no. She says yes when she is already exhausted and depleted. She says yes out of obligation, out of fear, out of a desperate need to not disappoint anyone. And with every inauthentic yes, a small piece of her soul dies. The guilt of a potential no feels so terrifying that she chooses the slow, quiet poison of resentment instead. So how do you silently break a chain that is so deeply intertwined with your sense of goodness? You do not break it by becoming a harsh or uncaring person. You break it by radically reframing the very meaning of the word no. The silent break is the internal realization that a no to another person is often a profound yes to yourself. The practice is to, before you answer any request, perform a silent internal check-in. It is to pause, and instead of immediately calculating the other person's potential disappointment, you must turn your attention inward. You must ask your own soul a simple question. What is the truest and most loving choice for me in this moment? You learn to see that your energy is not an infinite resource to be given away to anyone who asks. It is the sacred, life-giving water in the well of your own being, and it is not only your right, but your responsibility to be a wise guardian of that well. The silent break is the internal affirmation that must precede the external boundary. It is the act of whispering to your own heart, "My peace is a sacred treasure. My energy is a finite resource. It is not selfish to protect what is sacred. It is a holy duty." It is only from this place of profound self-devotion that you can deliver a clean, calm, and guilt-free no. This is the practice of our sovereign statement. Your no is not an apology. It is not a debate. It is a complete sentence. It is a quiet, powerful, and loving act of honoring the sacred ground of your own life. And you will discover that the right people will not be angered by your gates. They will respect the beautiful and well-tended kingdom that lies within them. The ninth chain is a subtle and powerful thief of joy. It is a chain that promises control but delivers only anxiety. It is the attachment to a specific outcome. This is the chain that keeps you living in a future that does not yet exist. It is the voice that whispers, "I will be happy when I get the promotion," or "I will finally feel secure when he commits to me," or "My life will begin when I find the perfect partner." The woman bound by this chain is a river guide who is so obsessed with reaching a specific pre-planned bend in the river that she refuses to navigate the actual currents of the water she is in right now. She is constantly fighting the river of life, trying to force it to go where she wants, instead of skillfully steering her boat within its powerful and often unpredictable flow. She is not present to the beauty of the journey. She is a prisoner of a single, fixed destination. This is a function of the ego's desperate need for certainty and its profound terror of the unknown. The ego believes it can and should be able to control the future. This creates a state of constant low-grade anxiety, a life spent mentally rehearsing for a future that may never arrive in the way you have imagined. In relationships, this manifests as the obsession with, "Where is this going?" You become so focused on the destination of commitment that you are no longer present to the actual connection. Every interaction becomes a test, every conversation a means to an end. You are not relating to the man in front of you. You are relating to your idea of a future with him. This energy of attachment, of trying to control the outcome, is a form of pressure that suffocates the organic, mysterious unfolding of love. So how do you silently break a chain that is forged from the very human desire for security? You break it with the wise and ancient practice of detachment and trust. This is not about becoming passive or giving up on your desires. It is about learning the profound difference between intention and attachment. The practice is a silent, internal reorientation. First, you set the intention. You point the compass of your soul in the direction you wish to go. You affirm that you are open to and worthy of a deep, loving, and committed partnership. Second, you release the itinerary. This is the silent break. It is the conscious act of surrendering the how, the when, and the with whom. You let go of the detailed ego-driven map of exactly how the journey must unfold. And third, you focus on the steering. You bring your full, undivided attention to the only thing you truly have control over, how you navigate your boat in this present moment. You focus on your own actions, your own integrity, your own joy right here, right now. This is the practice of trusting the river. You trust that if you navigate the present moment with skill, with sovereignty, and with an open heart, the river of life will carry you to a destination that is even more beautiful and more aligned with your soul than the one your limited ego could have ever planned. You stop trying to control the future, and in doing so, you finally become free to live your life. We arrive at the 10th and final chain. It is perhaps the most insidious of all, because it masquerades as wisdom, as prudence, as a responsible and noble form of self-improvement. It is the quiet, pervasive, and life-stealing belief that you are not yet ready. This is the chain of perfectionism and procrastination. It is the voice that whispers, "I will start living my real life when..." "I will start dating when I lose 10 pounds. I will apply for my dream job when I get one more certification. I will finally be happy when I have healed all of my trauma and become a perfect, enlightened being." A woman bound by this chain is like a librarian who spends her entire life in a magnificent library filled with the most incredible books in the world. She spends her days meticulously organizing the shelves, polishing the wood, cataloging every title, and preparing the library for some perfect future day when it will finally be ready to be enjoyed. But that day never comes. She is so busy preparing for a life of wisdom and adventure that she never allows herself to simply sit down, open a single book, and begin to read. The belief that you are not ready is the ego's most clever and powerful defense mechanism. It is born from a profound fear of failure, of judgment, of the messy, unpredictable, and imperfect reality of actually living. The state of preparing feels safe. It allows you to live in the fantasy of your own future potential without ever having to risk that potential in the real world. Not yet is the most comfortable and the most soul-crushing prison a person can build for themselves. So how do you silently break a chain that is disguised as your own responsible nature? You break it with the most terrifying and the most liberating practice of all. It is the practice of the first imperfect step. The silent break is not a grand, perfectly planned leap. It is a small, messy, and courageous step taken today, not tomorrow, not when you are ready, now, as you are. The practice is to identify one area of your life where you have been waiting to be ready, and then you must take one single imperfect action to move toward it. If you have been waiting to be ready to date, your practice is to create the dating profile tonight, using the pictures you have on your phone right now, not the perfect ones you plan to take someday. If you have been waiting to be ready for a new career, your practice is to send one email, to have one coffee chat, to watch one tutorial. If you have been waiting to be ready to feel joy, your practice is to put on one song and dance, imperfectly, in your living room for 3 minutes. This is the silent act of rebellion against the tyranny of perfectionism. You are proving to your own psyche with your actions that you are worthy of beginning your life as you are, not as some fantasy version of yourself that may or may not exist in the future. You are calling the bluff of your own fear, and you will discover a profound truth. The road is not built before the journey begins. The road is built by the very act of walking. We have now walked through the 10 hidden chambers of the invisible prison that can keep a woman's soul in bondage. We have named the chains: the vow of the good girl, the belief that love must be earned, the fear of our own power, the loyalty to old trauma, the addiction to the struggle, the need to be right, the fear of being too much, the guilt of saying no, the attachment to outcomes, and the paralyzing belief that we are not yet ready. And in naming them, in bringing them from the unconscious shadow into the light of our awareness, we have already begun the sacred work of breaking them. The final and most liberating truth is this: these chains, which for years have felt as heavy and as real as steel, are forged from nothing more than smoke. They are made of old beliefs that are no longer true, of outdated survival strategies that no longer serve you, and of a story about your own unworthiness that was never yours to begin with. Freedom, therefore, is not a distant destination you must earn your way to after a long and arduous battle. Freedom is your natural state. It is the vast, open, and peaceful landscape of your own soul that is already here, waiting for you, right beneath the chains. The work is not about building something new. It is about the courageous and quiet act of removing that which is false, so that the truth of who you are can finally be revealed. And what is the sound of a psychological chain breaking? It is not a loud, violent, or dramatic explosion. It is one of the quietest sounds in the universe. It is the sound of a deep exhale after a lifetime of holding your breath. It is the sound of a calm and guilt-free no. It is the sound of you choosing your own peace over the need to be right. It is the sound of you taking one small imperfect step in the direction of your dreams. This is the sound of your freedom. It is not a declaration you shout to the world. It is a quiet internal snap, a moment of profound realignment, followed by a deep and peaceful silence.